Okay, well, welcome back everyone to Sydney Summit live and in person once again. It's great to see all these faces in the room today, and I hope that you're having an insightful day so far. Now, you've joined this session because you want to know what it really means to become data-driven. You want to know how organizations are doing that successfully and what role data products can play in that. My name's Rick Fraser, and I'm an analytics solutions architect, but my passion is in helping customers extract value from their data. So in this session, with the help of a virtual whiteboard, we're going to walk through the journey of becoming data-driven. So let's start by talking about what it really means to be data-driven. There's many different ways to describe the properties of these organizations, but in general, these businesses use data as a strategic asset to help gain a competitive advantage. The way they do that is by using their data to generate insights. They then take action based on those insights, and those actions lead to an outcome with a tangible economic benefit attached to them. So in some way, these outcomes propel these businesses forward. That may be through the improvement of revenue, it could be through the reduction of cost, and it might be through the reduction of risk. In some cases, it's a combination of these factors. So I want to share a personal example with you. In 2019, I had the privilege of going on an extended holiday to Europe. And on that holiday, I needed to book a series of connecting flights to move between cities. Now, not being a local, I had no idea who would be the best airline to fly with. So to avoid putting all my eggs in one basket, I decided that I would book the first two flights with two different airlines. And based on how those two flights go, I'd book the rest with one of the airlines. So my first flight came around and I was traveling from London to Munich in Germany. Everything on this flight went pretty much to plan. Everything aside from a 30-minute delay to my boarding and my departure. This was the only minor kink in my experience. When the second flight came around, I was traveling from Berlin to Split, Croatia. And on this flight, everything did not go to plan. In the beginning, my flight was delayed by 1 hour. It was subsequently completely cancelled, and that meant that I had to rebook myself onto a new service. Now, it's pretty evident from looking at this table which of the airlines deserve the rest of my business, right? Well, I chose to continue flying with the second airline. So let me tell you why I did that. When the second airline delayed my service, they gave me 5 hours notice of that delay. It meant that I could plan around the interruption by simply arriving at the airport later. The way they did that was by using their real-time flight status data to generate a forecasted delay insight, and then they took action by notifying me. The first airline, on the other hand, they never told me about the delay. I was simply left standing in a queue for 30 minutes, waiting for someone to tell me when I can board the aircraft. Now, this is very much a first world problem, I acknowledge, but still, my customer experience was such that I was standing in that line for 30 minutes, and to me, it felt more like an hour. When the second airline cancelled my flight, they once again told me about it in a timely fashion. They also told me the reason for the cancellation. They said that we could no longer meet the destination airport before their curfew. Then, they gave me a next best route recommendation. This notification said that my service from Berlin to Split would not resume for another 2 days, but if I can move myself to a neighbouring airport, Hanover, then I can take the 5 a.m. service down the next day. They had used their scheduling information, coupled with geolocation data, to generate a route recommendation, and then they shared it with me. When I finally took that flight down to Split, as I was disembarking the aircraft, I received another notification, this time on my watch. And it said, "Welcome to Split. We hope you enjoyed your flight. Your baggage will shortly arrive at carousel number 3. They had coupled their customer data with flight information to generate an insight about my baggage, and then they shared it with me again. Now, as we can all appreciate, no airline is immune to the occasional delay or cancellation. But what impressed me about the second airline was the way that they kept me informed about the interruptions so that I could plan around them. Even when my flight was cancelled, they still helped me get to my destination. So the outcome for this second airline, by taking all of these insight-driven actions, was that they turned a customer who would have otherwise churned into an advocate for their brand. They improved their revenue by securing additional bookings with me. They lowered their cost structure by allowing me to self-service through the rebooking process. And you could even argue that they lowered the risk of another airline coming in and disrupting their business model. They're building loyalty. Now, these are benefits on somewhat of a micro scale. I'm just one customer. But if you think about how that experience can scale across a broad base of customers, then these benefits really start to stack up. Now, this airline are not the only organization out there who are using their data as a strategic asset. According to a new Vantage Partners study from 2022, 97% of blue chip organizations are investing in their data. They want to realize these benefits as well. But only 27% of them have successfully become data-driven. Only just over a quarter of them have managed to find the right balance between their people, their process, and their technology in order to be successful. And being successful here does rely on a balance of these factors, right? The people, the process, and the technology. So we're going to address each of them in this session, and we'll pay a lot of attention to the technology, given this is a summit. But here's the thing. 92% of these organizations say that their biggest impediment to becoming data-driven is not technology, but culture. It's their people and process. So let's start by talking about the non-technical element, the people and process part. Now, we said that data-driven organizations use their data to generate insights. They then take actions based on those insights, and those actions lead to an outcome with a tangible economic benefit attached. One of the easiest traps to fall into when on this journey is to start it with a sole focus on the technology. By investing in a series of tools, using those tools to capture and integrate data sets, start generating insights, but do all of that before deeply considering the actions that we want these insights to enable, and even more importantly, the outcomes that we want them to drive. Early in my career, I was contracting for a customer to help them become more data-driven. The way we were approaching that was by sourcing all of their customer data and then building what we called a Customer 360 insight solution. We said that with these insights, we can take more tailored actions with our customers, and that will lead to an improved customer experience. Now, on this project, we had all of the tool sets required, we had all of the engineers that we needed, and we had the budget to deliver on outcomes. But as the months progressed, we struggled to realize our goal of generating value. And in fact, we were showing every sign that we were about to fall into this 92% category. The project started moving slowly. There was misalignment amongst stakeholders on what Customer 360 actually meant. So of course, that led to finger pointing. And at this point, the tension between business and IT could have been cut with a knife. Now, I'm sure that I'm not the only person in the room who's been on a project like this, and it is not nice for anyone. But our problem was not with technology. We had the tools and we had the engineers. Our problem was with people and process. We didn't have the right business stakeholders who could point us to the highest value outcomes to chase, and we didn't have a process we could work through to align all of our efforts on a single and core objective. Now, luckily, we were able to actually turn this project around. About 6 months into the project, I met a new and key business stakeholder named Janet. Janet had been in the organization for over 10 years. She understood the corporate value chains like the back of her hand. And Janet wanted to have a workshop with me and my team so that we could align on the outcomes of our project. So in this workshop, Janet brought along SMEs from different departments of the organization and different levels of the hierarchy. Each of them had ideas on problems and opportunities that we could solve for with data. So in this workshop, we worked through a process that started with each of the business SMEs, the subject matter experts, clearly articulating the outcome that they wanted to drive with data. We then discussed the actions that would need to be taken to enable that outcome. Following that, we worked through the insights that would help us take those actions, and we worked our way backwards to the data sets that would be required to generate the insights. One of the SMEs said that they wanted to reduce the amount of time that agents spend on the phone with customers. They called that metric average handling time, and they said that if we could reduce this average handling time, then we could take cost out of our contact centers, and we could also improve our customer experience. In order to do that, the agents would need to be able to make some form of prediction about the reason the customer is calling us. So to support that, the agents would need information about the common reasons that customers call. The most common reason was a question about bills. So we said that we would need to supply bill variance data, both month on month and year on year. Another common reason was that customers have subscribed to a new service and they have a question about it. So we need those kinds of insights too. And of course, if a customer already has an open dialogue with us, perhaps a support case or even a complaint, then we need to have that information on hand, ready for the agent to support that more tailored conversation. Based on those insights, we all agreed that we needed to source data from our CRM, where all of the customer data resided, and from our billing system, so that we could generate those variance insights. So we worked through this process for each of the ideas that came up in that workshop, and it became evident by the end of this workshop that we had been starting with the technology and trying to work our way towards a somewhat arbitrary or undefined outcome. What we should have been doing was starting with the outcome and working our way backwards towards the technology. The only way that we could do that was if we had the business stakeholders who had a deep understanding of the business processes that were ready for optimization or complete reinvention. We needed the right people. Now, with all of these great ideas out on the board, it was very tempting to pick up a few use cases and jump straight into delivery mode. But Janet insisted that we start by delivering on one outcome so that we can prove our process and set the wheels in motion. So we agreed as a group that if we're to start with one of these use cases, then it might as well be the one that generates the most value with the least amount of delivery effort. Or in other words, the use case with the highest return on investment. To determine what that was, we worked through another process. We assigned an expected economic value, an expected return against each of our use cases. For average handling time, this meant answering questions like, by what percentage do we realistically think that we can reduce that average call duration by? And what does that translate to in dollar terms? The SMEs said that this could be worth up to $4 million. Our next use case was one to reduce customer churn. One of the SMEs said that if we could proactively identify when a customer is likely to leave based on their behavior, then we could send them an automated retention offer, thus reducing the likelihood that they leave us. And this could be worth $3 million. So we worked through that process of assigning a value to each of our use cases, and then we moved on to the technical complexity. We asked the developers to assign a score between 1 and 10 that represented the amount of effort required to deliver that outcome. For the average handling time use case, they said it was a 3 out of 10. We've already sourced some of the data, and we have a little bit of a head start. The churn use case was slightly more complex at 5 because it involves some machine learning. Again, we assigned a score to each of the use cases. Once we had each of those dimensions, the value and the complexity, we were then able to visualize each of those use cases on what we called a prioritization matrix, representing value against complexity and also giving us a view of return on investment. We could see that the average handling time use case, with an expected value of $4 million and a complexity of 3, sat here. The churn use case had slightly lower value and slightly higher complexity, so it sat there. And we scored each of the use cases on this prioritization matrix, and it became evident to us that the use case we should start with, the one with the highest return on investment, was in the top left corner, the average handling time use case. Now, we went on to deliver that average handling time use case within 2 months from this workshop. It reduced the average call duration by almost 10%, represented a huge economic benefit. The only thing that had changed here was the people and the process. Janet brought in the right business stakeholders, and we work through a process to prioritize our efforts and align on a single and core objective. In the final 7 months of this project, we delivered an additional 14 use cases. Every time we did it, it got easier and easier, and we got faster and faster at doing it. The reason we were able to do that had a lot to do with our architecture, a lot to do with the technology. So let's talk about the technology. Now, just because 92% of organizations say their biggest challenge in becoming data-driven is people and process, does not mean that the technology is trivial. Sourcing data and generating insights can also be hard, but it's made harder if our data is spread across silos, if we don't have a complete set of tools that map to each of our use cases and personas, and if our systems don't scale seamlessly. So it becomes very important to think strategically about the foundations of our data platform. The way we recommend doing this is by using an architectural pattern that we call the modern data architecture. A modern data architecture recognizes that no single tool can solve for every single use case. Different use cases have different end user experience requirements. In some cases, we may want to expose a SQL interface so that operations staff can join together and aggregate data sets and surface insights relevant for their role. In other cases, we may want to provide a more visual experience, something that we can do with a business intelligence toolset. And at other times, we may want to search through millions of documents with ultra-low latency. Each of these have different end user experience requirements. They likely have different data processing requirements and probably latency requirements. So with the modern data architecture, rather than bringing all of our data to one tool and trying to solve all of our problems with that single tool, we start by building strategic foundations and then bring a purpose-built tool set to our data based on the needs of our use case. That starts by building a scalable data lake backed by Amazon S3. S3 is our object storage service, and it has market-leading scalability and durability. With S3, we can bring together all of our data sets from databases, files of structured, semi-structured, or unstructured nature into one location and store them in open formats. These are formats like Parquet, possibly CSV and JSON. In the case of semi-structured data, the choice of format is up to you. Once we've done that, we then need to catalog our data sets so that they're available to tools and people, and make it secure so that only intended users can read our data. We can do these tasks with AWS Lake Formation has an inbuilt data catalog, and it can automatically scan the contents of the data lake catalog and capture metadata about your data and surface that to tools and people. It also has an inbuilt security layer. So with Lake Formation, we can apply a single layer of security on top of our data lake so that only intended users have access to our information. Once we have built these strategic and scalable foundations, then we can engage purpose-built data services based on the needs of our use case. Now, the benefits of taking this approach are that this is an open system. This is an open architecture. We're not building another data silo here. We are building open and interoperable foundations that can adapt and evolve to our use cases as they change over time. This architecture is also scalable. S3 will automatically expand and contract as we add and remove data from our data lake, and the analytics services at the top are serverless, so they'll scale dynamically and will only pay for what we use. It is also, of course, secure. By using Lake Formation, we can implement fine-grained access controls on top of our catalog data sets to the row and column combination so that only intended users will have access to our data. So with these foundations in place, we can now move on to solving for our use cases. The first use case that we wanted to solve on Janet's project was one to reduce average handling time. To solve for that architecturally, we work backwards from the agent who is having a conversation with the customer. The agent needs a single place they can go to capture all the relevant information about the customer they're speaking with to support a more tailored conversation. We can supply them that with a visual interface using Amazon QuickSight. QuickSight is our cloud-native business intelligence service. It is serverless and it has a usage-based pricing model. So with QuickSight, we can supply those insights to our agent. Behind QuickSight, we need a high-performance SQL engine, something that can join together these data sets, aggregate and filter them, and then surface the insights to QuickSight with low latency. We can do that with Amazon Redshift. This is our cloud-native data warehousing service, and it offers up to 3 times better price performance versus any other data warehouse. Redshift also integrates natively with our foundations in the data lake, so it can read the data without copying or duplicating it, apply the analytics, and then provide it to QuickSight to support the agent's more tailored conversation. Now, of course, we need to source our data too. To do that, we capture data from our CRM system and our billing engine. We bring that into our scalable data lake and store it in open formats. Let's choose Parquet. And once we've done that, we can apply some curation on top of our data before establishing our first data products by cataloging them inside Lake Formation. These data products are read by Redshift and supplied to the agent via QuickSight to support that more tailored conversation. Now, there is one more very important step here. We need to account for the benefits that this use case has delivered. So this means instrumenting our environment so that we have an accurate view of the before and after picture, and therefore the economic value that has been delivered. Now, on Janet's project, we assigned an expected value of $4 million to this use case. In practice, we actually delivered a bit less than that. Let's call it $3 million. The fact that we didn't quite meet our objective of $4 million here was not the headline. The headline was that we had just delivered a tangible economic benefit out of our platform. And once we could say that, the trajectory of our project completely changed. We had a new wave of support from the business ready to help us tackle that next use case. To do that, we moved back to the prioritization matrix. Now, I told you earlier that in the final 7 months of our project, we delivered an additional 14 use cases, each time getting easier and faster. Let's look at why that is. Our next use case, this churn use case, has overlapping data requirements with the average handling time use case. Now, this is where the benefits of our strategically built foundations start to show. Because we established those data products in open and interoperable formats, and we can bring the engine of our choice to that data, we can now reuse those data products at a marginal cost of close to zero. We don't need to move the data between systems. We don't need to reformat it at all. We can simply use it as is. What that translates to is a reduction in the technical complexity of our next use case. And that also means we have an improved return on investment. We get the same outcome with lower technical complexity. So thanks to our strategically built foundations, we just got a huge head start on our next use case in customer churn. To solve for that, we once again work backwards from the outcome that we want to deliver. We want to automatically send an offer, a retention offer, to our customers if we notice that they're likely to churn. To do that, we can use Amazon Pinpoint. Pinpoint is a scalable marketing communication service, and it lets us reach our customers via text, email, push notification, or even voice. So Pinpoint can send those automated offers to our customers. We, of course, need to determine when a customer is likely to churn, and we can do that using Amazon SageMaker. SageMaker is a fully managed service, and it helps customers build, train, and deploy machine learning models for any use case. SageMaker also integrates with our strategically built foundations in the data lake, so it can read those data products, and then when it determines a customer is likely to churn, we can call Pinpoint to send that automated offer. So with just this, we had now delivered more value out of our platform at a low marginal effort. Any future use case that also relied on these customer and billing data sets could also benefit from those investments. And if any of them made incremental improvements to the quality of those data products, then the rest of the use cases already hanging off them would benefit. Now, the power of this architectural pattern is that it can cater to the needs of any organization, any scale, and any structure. Some organizations manage their analytics and deliver on their outcomes with a single team running on a single centralized platform. It may look something like this. Other organizations take a more decentralized approach to their analytics. Maybe they have larger teams, more departments, perhaps they're spread across geographies. They may adopt patterns like data mesh. On Janet's project, we delivered our outcomes using a single and centralized approach that looked like this. We called it the customer data platform. But over time, additional teams spun up their own analytics capabilities so that they could benefit from delivering these similar outcomes. The first team to do that was the marketing team. Now, the marketing team followed the same process that we did in the customer team. They sourced their data sets, they brought them into a scalable data lake backed by Amazon S3, cataloged them, made them available, and made those data sets secure, and then they engaged purpose-built tool sets based on the needs of their use cases so that they could deliver on outcomes. But these two environments do not need to operate in isolation of one another. Rather, they can be linked at the catalog layer so that the marketing team from day one could benefit from the investments already made by the customer team, and similarly, the customer team over time could start to benefit from the data products built in the marketing team. So this is a very strategic architectural pattern because it maximizes our ability to reuse data products across diverse sets of use cases, and it can adapt and evolve as our needs change over time. So, a few key takeaways and ways that we as AWS can help you on this journey. Organizations that become data-driven work backwards from their outcome towards the technology sets that they use to solve. They involve a diverse set of stakeholders to capture all of the ideas around business processes ready for optimization and reinvention. Once they have those ideas, they then prioritize them so that they can align on a single and core objective and set the wheels in motion. 92% of organizations say that their biggest challenge in becoming data-driven is people and process. So if you'd like some help with that part, then I would encourage you to connect with our data strategy team. Our data strategy team can take you through a program called Data-Driven Everything, where they'll help you assemble the right business stakeholders to source your highest value use cases aligned to your business strategy, and then translate that into a prioritized roadmap for execution. You can connect with our data strategy team using the email address on screen, and you can find out more with the QR code at the top right. A modern data architecture will help you maximize your ability to reuse the investments that you've made in your data products. Building scalable foundations and focusing on interoperability will help you future-proof your data efforts and maximize your return on investment. So if you're already aligned on your highest value outcome, but you would like some help with the technical design and delivery of that, then I would encourage you to connect with our Data Lab team. Our Data Lab team can help you work backwards from an outcome through the technical design and delivery in a week-long and intensive co-build exercise. This team can also be reached using the email address on screen, and you can find out more with the QR code at the top right. If you'd like to help your team with training and certification, then you should visit Skill Builder. This is our online learning resource center, and you can access over 600 free digital courses, hands-on labs, and role-based games. Now, if you're not yet on the journey to becoming data-driven, but you're thinking about how it might apply to you, then I'd ask you to consider what a quick win might look like inside your organization. In some cases, it can be as simple as sharing data and insights that you already have with your customers. And that's exactly what the second airline did for me. Thank you so much for your time. I would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to complete the survey on this session. I personally read all of your comments, and I get a lot of value from hearing your feedback. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your summit.